So this week is week 3 of Monster Month 2022. Usually I ask the Discord a question, but since it's Monster Month, I'm picking out the lore questions until November. And this week's lore that I have chosen for Monster Month is on the Swamp Folk of Fallout 3's DLC, Point Lookout. Now, I get all of my lore off of fallout.fandom.com. I do have my notes with me today, but towards the end I will be checking the wiki just to double check some things and talk more in depth about the variants of people that are the Swamp Folk. A mutated type of human that inhabit Point Lookout in the year of 2277. Descendant of locals from Point Lookout. They have a closed-off behavior that was present even before the Great War, before post-war. A big thing with them, and I have it written in my notes, is they are stereotypical Hicks. They're very much like, they have a very unique way of speaking. I believe the exact examples on the wiki was "I sees you" and "I's gon' kill you." Just English that isn't correct through years of poor education, inbreeding, and to pile on top of that nuclear fallout. They are very territorial and incredibly inbred. I have written exactly in my notes, hostile towards any sort of outsider. They are only really cool with marsh folk, which are other people that live there that are locals, but they're not swamp folk. So, they're normals, which is a really shitty way to say people that aren't inbred and irradiated. The marsh folk are still considered locals in their eyes. Now, they have a religion all to their own. It is a rudimentary belief system based on the cult leader of Constantine Blackhall. It's somewhat of like a voodoo-esque religion. That's what it's derivative of, in a sense. You can kind of see the inspiration that they put into it through things like voodoo. They decorate their living spaces with straw dolls and trees, bone totems, teddy bears, mannequin heads, and various other dolls strewn about as part of their rituals. Some speculate that they believe in their own entity completely devoid of what Blackhall had taught them, called Ugg, Qualtoth. I believe that's Ugg Quilithoth. It will be on screen the way it is spelled behind me, Ugg Quilithoth. The religion that they have, like I said, is derivative. It's been inspired to or related to Voodoo, Santeria, and Obeth. Now, Constantine Blackhall was able to take hold of the swamp people with the help of the Krevbalinth. Now, the Krevbalinth is the Fallout universe's version of the Necronomicon. It's a book that deals in the occult. Ugg Quilithoth is believed to have been some sort of either from that or derived from that. Most of what the swamp folk believe in at this point, they're not sure if even the lessons or the teachings that Blackhall had given has any real grasp on these people, or if it's just tradition for the sake of tradition. But her teachings, some form of her teachings has carried on until 2277. She lived an unusually long time after the bombs fell, and a lot of people equated it to the Krevbalinth. They thought because she had the Krevbalinth and because she was teaching these words that the gods or deities that she was preaching of kept her alive to spread that word and took hold of these swamp people with their poor education and their incredibly inbred families. At some point, somebody stole the Krevbalinth from her, and she died shortly after. Now, it's not known if the swamp people took the Krevbalinth or not, or if someone else took it. Could have been anybody else, but the swamp people still believe in her teachings. They still follow, they still believe in the words that came from the Krevbalinth. The swamp folk are one, inbred, like I've been repeating. They're also incredibly close-minded. And in the 2050s, the new plague swept through Point Lookout and affected them tremendously. And because of the mixture of the fallout, of the new plague and the nuclear fallout, they developed a trademark Point Lookout look because of this. It was not directly, Point Lookout was not directly hit by a bomb, but the fallout, the nuclear fallout, affected them tremendously. There was a thing that happened when, I want to say it was like 2009, 2010, 2011. There was the nuclear reactor in Japan that had been damaged, and there was parts of California that were being affected by the fallout because of that. So whichever way the wind blows is going to be taking the brunt of the damage after the bombs go off. One of my favorite quotes that I've ever heard about a nuclear attack is, it's not the bomb that gets you, it's everything after. If you are at the center point where the bomb goes off, you're incredibly lucky. You're vaporized. You went from being alive to being dust in a matter of moments. If you are anywhere outside the blast radius, you are in for a nightmare, a hellish situation. And these people got that. Not to mention, before the war, when the Great Plague was sweeping through Point Lookout, this dramatically affects the population of these people. So they're running low on people, resources, hope. And then all of a sudden, something like that, like if a town really got hit by COVID, like that town is going to be devastated for an incredibly long time. Even if it's just the people who had to live through it that will remember it. Like I said, they're stereotypical hicks. They speak... They drop out words and they drop out letters out of simple phrases, and they're shortened and they sound like they have mushed mouths. Those aren't the people that people want to help. Like, just speaking like stereotypically, people don't want to help Billy Bob, Joe, Cream, Bob, Sleeve Pants because they're not attractive people. They're looked down upon. Instead of saying, hey, maybe we can educate them and help them. No, they're ugly. Fuck them. Now, because this is supposed to be such late game DLC, the Swamp Folk-like tribals do an additional 35 damage to the player character with all of the weapons they normally use due to an object enhancement in the add-on's data files. Just meaning you're not in there just blowing through them, and they're incredibly hard. I remember the first time I ever played this, just like wanting to cry with how hard it was, because I'm a level 30 character and I'm getting schwapped. Some of the types are the brawlers. Large, but not as large as the trackers and bruisers. They wear clothes that actually fit them, which are overalls and an orange shirt underneath. They are tougher than scrappers, but somewhat weaker than creepers. And are rough. I know there's like a meme where the wiki's not written perfectly, but that's just like, they're kind of like this, but not really like that, but sort of like this if you kind of count this, but kind of like that, but not really like this. They are roughly on par with super mutant brutes in terms of durability and in skill. Bruisers are stronger and have substantially more health than trackers, and like creepers are covered in blood. The build tag on the jumpsuit that they wear, the shirt they wear, is still readable. Like trackers, they engage in only melee combat and use axes. Again, like trackers, even when unequipped, they still inflict large amounts of damage with only their fists. In fact, bruisers have an even higher unarmed damage rating than Deathclaws. They also punch very fast, making blocking very difficult. Like their tracker cousins, they are slower than Deathclaws or Feral Ghoul Reavers, and lack ranged attacks. The Creeper, oh man. Creepers share the same body structure as Scrappers, but have blonde hair and blood on their hands, chest, mouth, pants, and boots. These, in my opinions, are the scariest. They are stronger and have almost 3 times as much health as Scrappers, and are slightly more durable than Super Mutant Masters. These dudes have no jaw and no shirt. These dudes are just as scary. The Scrappers are the smallest and the weakest of the swamp folk. They're skinny with distended bellies and only wear pants and boots. They're not wearing socks, too. Ugh. If there's anything I hate is when people don't wear socks. Just wear some socks. They have somewhat more health than regular super mutants. They also appear to have the least amount of mutation, disfiguration on their skin and body, excluding their body structure, compared to other swamp folk of Point Lookout. The Tracker. Trackers are very large swamp folk, standing roughly 7 feet tall, who use axes to attack strangers in close combat. This class of swamp folk will either attack the Lone Wanderer in hand-to-hand combat or fisticuffs, or use melee weapons like axes due to the fact that the trackers have extremely swollen, clubbin-like fingers. This means it would be nearly impossible to fit those fingers around a trigger. They run with a hop in their step and are very strong and durable. Like the Bruiser, even when unequipped, they can still inflict large amounts of damage with only their fists. Trackers are not strongly affected by the dart gun. Their legs crippled, they can still run at close to normal speed. Also, while they run, they show at least a small amount of intelligence, or at least instinct, as they put one of their swollen arms in front of their face, making it harder to score a headshot in VATS. They can survive somewhat more damage than a Deathclaw or a Sentry Bot, but are slower than Deathclaws. Not going to go super deep into it, but there are some marsh folk that are associated with the swamp folk, like Kenny, Marguerite, I'm never sure how to say this, Obadiah Blackhall, and Haley. Just some notes in behind the scenes for you. Swamp folk are registered as creatures in the GEC and function like Point Lookout's version of super mutants. They also make the same walking sound as the super mutants. Even the smaller ones make this noise. The player character can wait and fast travel while close to swamp folk that have not noticed them. Creepers and scrappers can fire lever-action rifles at speeds comprehensible to firing a sniper rifle at top speed. The swamp folk mark their territory with voodoo-like idols. Some swamp folk may carry human flesh. Cannibalism. Swamp folk can be observed dancing around the Beachview campsite, but nowhere else in Point Lookout, and only after the conclusion of the main Point Lookout questline. Fun. Some behind the scenes for you kids at home. During development of Point Lookout, the original plan was for the swamp folk to be a single model, and the production and animation of that model would be outsourced to another studio. 3 concepts were drafted for what was supposed to be the only new character type in Point Lookout, but due to the communication mishap, all 3 designs were shared with the outsourced studio and created. This was not caught until all the work was completed and the models and animation. All the work was completed on the models and animation. Lead designer Joel Burgess compared the incident to receiving extra pizza from a store that could not be returned. That happened to me once. I didn't get pizza. I ordered wings, and they sent me the wrong order. I ordered 2 dozen wings, and they sent me 4 dozen wings. And I didn't say anything, but the people who should have got them were very upset. I don't know that to be factual. I can only imagine. In the sound files for Point Lookout, there are sound files of what is believed to be female swamp folk. The text for the quotes are almost the same as the male ones, except the voice lines are placeholder recordings performed by a man in place of a future recording by a woman, which never actually happened. Female swamp folk were not included because the enemies were originally only supposed to be 1 model anyway, and development never got that far. The file is DLC04 female yokel. During development, swamp folk would spawn infinitely and sometimes be found waiting in masses outside of the interior exits, which lead artist Nathan Purkpile described as his favorite bug that was fixed pre-release to Point Lookout. In regards to the dancing animation that was done outside of the Beachview campsite, Burgess, again, the designer that I spoke about previously, stated that Bethesda had a ratchet, his words, ratchet, motion capture setup in the studio at the time, and the team convinced the level designer, Jeff Brown, to do a hoedown in the mocap equipment. As a rather tall person, Brown had the right proportions for the animation. Brown ended up dancing for about 45 minutes, and the animation was almost cut because they kept Brown in the mocap for too long. Years later, Brown became a mocap artist for Bethesda on Starfield. Cool. Imagine just being like, yeehaw, just gonna do me a little jiggity jag and get on with it. And then now you're like a well-paid man. The swamp folk were referred to as hill folk in several pre-release media articles. Nice. I have to say, some of this is non-game, and it's sorted outside. Some of them are sorted from different magazines, and some of them are like the Fallout 4, which is weird because it's Fallout 3, but like the Fallout 4 official guide, they kind of talk about like the development of things. According to Jeff Gardner, a lead producer, Swamp Folk take inspiration from the films The Hills Have Eyes and the movie Deliverance in an ironic sense. The point lookout look that I referred to earlier that the Swamp Folk have may be a reference to the phenomenon of the Innsmouth look from the H.P. Lovecraft novella The Shadow over Innsmouth, which is a result of a local contained population engaging in inbreeding as well as breeding with amphibious monsters they worship. I need to read Lovecraft. I need to read that book, because it's really all I have for you on the Swamp Folk of Fallout 3's DLC Point Lookout. And that, my friends, is in fact this week's lore. Hey, hi, it's Vince. I hope you enjoyed that video you just watched. If you'd like to support in any sort of way, in the description below there's links to my Twitter, the show's Twitter, and the Patreon. You could support at any level, and you could be on screen like some of the names are currently. I hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching, and if you get a chance, check out another one of my videos. I'd really appreciate it. Share it with a friend. Cool. I'll see you guys later. Be safe. I love you. Bye!